A beautiful young archaeologist vanishes during an excavation in New Mexico and wakes up in a mysterious jungle lost in time. Chased by ancient warriors through tangled forests, she runs for her life until a silent hunter appears from the shadows. Who is he? Why does he know her name? But something darker follows. A ghostly figure with a skull-like face and glowing eyes, hunting her without rest. Magic, a curse. This is no ordinary past. This is war. Forgotten empires clash in bloodless conquest, and she's caught in the middle. Will she escape or become part of a forgotten legend? I never thought a summer internship would change my life forever. I was 24, just out of grad school, and had joined an archaeology team digging deep in the New Mexico desert. The site was remote, quiet, and full of buried stories. Locals warned us about the place. They spoke of old spirits, cursed lands, and people who disappeared. We laughed, of course. No one believes that stuff until it's too late. My name's Aaron, and I remember the moment it all shifted like it was yesterday. One afternoon, while cleaning the base of a crumbling stone chamber, I felt a strange vibration in my chest. Not from the ground, not from just something deep, ancient, pulling me. Before I could call out, the world around me vanished in a flash of golden light. When I opened my eyes, I wasn't in the desert anymore. Trees surrounded me. The air was thick, alive, heavy with moisture. I could hear drums in the distance. I stood up slowly, trying to understand what just happened. Figures watched me from the trees, faces painted, bodies half covered in feathers and beads. I panicked and ran. The jungle was wild, roots clawing at my feet, thorns slicing my arms. Behind me, I could hear them chasing, their shouts growing closer. I thought I was done for until someone grabbed me and yanked me into a cave hidden behind moss. His name was Kale. He was young, quiet, intense. His eyes searched mine like he already knew who I was. Kale told me this land was not a dream. It was real, locked in time, older than any empire. He said I had crossed into the realm of the old blood, where the past refused to die. I didn't understand any of it, but I followed him. What choice did I have? He moved fast, navigating the jungle like he was part of it. We stayed low, avoiding the patrols of painted warriors who roamed in packs, guarding something sacred or cursed. Then Kale spoke of Tharuks, a creature, not a man. A tall figure cloaked in darkness, with a face like bleached bone. No eyes, no mouth, just jagged fangs and empty sockets that glowed green in the dark. They said he once ruled a city of the dead. Now he wandered the ruins, drawn to outsiders, to intruders like me, and somehow he already knew I was here. We met a woman named Saya a few days later, a healer, fierce and graceful, with silver streaks in her black hair. She barely spoke, but kept a blade hidden under her robe and always walked behind me. She didn't trust me, not yet, but she trusted Kale, and that was enough to keep her close. At night I heard whispers beyond the trees. The jungle never slept. The wind carried strange songs. Once I saw green lights weaving between the branches like eyes. Kale said not to look too long. There was a night we stopped by a dry riverbed. Saya handed me fruit. Kale sat by the fire, silent. For a moment, it felt almost safe. Then the ground beneath us pulsed. A low hum returned, the same one I felt before crossing over. Saya stood up, her eyes wide, hand already on her blade. Kale looked at me, his voice barely a whisper. Kale didn't sleep that night. I watched him from where I lay, eyes half shut, heart pounding. Every rustle in the trees sounded like footsteps getting closer. Saya pressed herbs to my wrist and whispered something I couldn't understand. She didn't need to. Her eyes said it all. Something had crossed over with me, something they didn't want here. At sunrise we moved, fast, silent. The jungle opened into a dry valley with ruins carved deep into the cliffs. A man waited for us there. His name was Oren. He wore bone pendants around his neck and walked with a quiet intensity. He looked at me like he'd seen a dream return. "You don't belong to this age," he said. I asked him what he meant, but he only turned and motioned us forward. Inside the ruins, strange symbols glowed faintly on the stone. It felt colder there, like the walls breathed in and out. Kale told me the temple had once sealed something beneath it. I asked if it was Tharuks. Neither of them answered. Instead, Oren handed me a small stone etched with spirals. Said it would protect me. Said it used to belong to a girl like me. Saya touched the stone and flinched. Her fingers trembled for a moment too long. Outside, the sky had changed. Clouds moved in unnatural ways. spinning slowly above the trees. We left the valley before nightfall, following a dry stream toward an abandoned outpost. That's where we found Renya. She was no warrior, thin, limping, covered in dust. She said she'd been hiding for days. Thuruks had passed through her village. No fire, no blood, just silence. Everything gone. She didn't look at me when she spoke, just stared at the horizon. That night I dreamt of water, a dark river running through cracked earth, carrying pieces of faces and bones. When I woke, my mouth tasted like ash. Kale had gone. Saya sat beside the fire, eyes locked on the jungle's edge. He's scouting ahead, she said. But I could tell she didn't believe it. Oren was drawing shapes in the dirt, murmuring words that didn't sound human. Renya slept curled into herself like a child. Then we heard it, a low guttural hum rising from beneath us. Oren froze. His eyes went white for a moment. Then he grabbed my arm. "You need to run." Branches split as something heavy moved through the dark. I ran with Renya, heart beating too loud to hear anything else. Behind us, the jungle screamed. Not voices, trees, air, ground, all crying out at once. I lost sight of Kale. We crossed a shallow ravine and dropped into a cave. I could barely breathe. Renya was shaking, whispering that she saw eyes behind us. Not green this time. Red. They glowed like coals in a dying fire. Saya found us minutes later, panting, arms scraped. She said Kale led Thuruks away, bought us time. I wanted to go back. She wouldn't let me. You go back, we all vanish. He knew the risk. Oren caught up just before dawn. His voice cracked when he told us the temple seal was weakening. Thuruks wasn't just hunting me. He was feeding on the energy that brought me here. Time had folded and something ancient was slipping through. I asked how to stop it. Oren looked at the stone in my hand. "That's the key," he said. "But keys can open or lock. Depends on the hand that holds them." And that's when I knew. Thuruks didn't just want me gone. He needed me to open something. And I might have already done it. I didn't sleep for days. Even when my body gave out, my mind stayed alert, stuck somewhere between then and now. Every sound echoed too loud. Every shadow felt like it moved. Saya kept close, speaking less and watching more. Oren was the only one who seemed calm. He claimed time was stretching thin, that it didn't matter what day it was anymore. I didn't understand what that meant, but the silence around us felt older than language. Renya started whispering in her sleep, words none of us recognized. We moved inland, deeper into a valley no one spoke of. The path was marked with faded carvings, symbols even Oren wouldn't translate. He told us the village ahead was empty now, but it wasn't. There were no people, but things were still warm. Fires still smoked, bowls still filled. Something had been there, moments before. The wind shifted and everything went still. No birds, no bugs, just the soft crackle of dying flame. I stepped into what looked like a prayer room, lined with polished obsidian and bones shaped into patterns. Kale was there, standing alone. Or I thought it was him, until he turned. His eyes weren't his eyes. They glowed red, like embers trapped behind glass. And when he spoke, his voice was too calm. "Aaron, you shouldn't have come." I stepped back, my mouth dry, legs numb. Saya pulled me behind her. Oren moved fast, whispering something into the wind. Kale laughed, but it wasn't Kale's laugh. Thuruks had taken him, or part of him. I couldn't tell if Kale was still in there or just a shell. Renya cried out and ran. We followed, into the woods, deeper, faster. The trees stretched taller, the light changed color. It was green one moment, purple the next. Nothing made sense anymore. We found shelter in a cave marked with hands on the ceiling. Child-sized, overlapping, dozens of them. Inside it was colder than outside, like we'd stepped into stone that had never felt the sun. I asked Oren if Kale was gone. He hesitated, said sometimes people come back, but they never return the same. Renya started drawing the spiral symbol over and over again in the dirt. She wouldn't stop. Saya said it was the mark of the rift, the place where time bleeds. I asked what Thuruks wanted. Oren said he was born from collapse, that he fed on endings, not people, not places, but the unraveling of order itself. I felt sick. The stone in my bag was growing warm, almost hot. That night, Oren dreamt of waves, not water, sound. He said the mountains screamed. We moved again before sunrise. None of us talked much. The trail narrowed into a canyon, lined with masks carved into the walls, each one different, some smiling, some weeping, all cracked. Renya reached out to touch one and collapsed. Her body twisted, like something passed through her, but she didn't scream. just opened her eyes and said one word, "Soon." Then she fainted. We carried her to a ridge overlooking an ancient city, now buried under vines. It pulsed like a heartbeat. Oren knelt and said this was where it began. This was where Tharux first came through. And this is where he would return. I didn't ask how. I didn't want the answer. Saya lit a small fire and drew a circle around us in crushed leaves. Said it was protection. I wasn't sure if it was for us or for what might try to leave. When I looked back down at the city, I could see something walking through the ruins. Not running, not hiding, just walking. Its shape was wrong, shoulders too wide, movements too smooth, and even from a distance, I felt it, like gravity shifting in my chest, like being watched from inside my own thoughts. I wasn't sure how much time we had left, but I knew something had already begun to change, and maybe it had nothing to do with Tharux at all. Maybe the real danger was me. I kept thinking about what Oren said, that maybe I was the one bringing the change. It didn't feel possible, but the stone hadn't cooled in days. It pulsed now, like it was alive. Saya wouldn't touch it anymore. Renya didn't speak at all. We moved silently through the ruins, careful not to step where carvings warned us off. A riverbed cut across our path, dry but etched with spirals. Oren said we should follow it. By midday we reached a clearing where 6 trees stood in a perfect circle, roots tangled like they held something beneath. A man waited in the center. His name was Elian. Tall, eyes clouded like glass, skin marked with faded ash. He said he had been sent by the Dreaming One. Oren looked shaken, said that name hadn't been spoken in a generation. Elian didn't look at me. He spoke to the stone. "It's listening now," he whispered. "It knows you're close." Then he stepped back, and the air in the clearing dropped. Not cold, just empty, like the world blinked. Saya gripped my arm and I could feel her hand tremble. We stayed that night beneath the roots. Renya woke screaming but didn't remember why. Elian stood at the edge of the trees, unmoving, eyes fixed on the ridge behind us. I asked what he saw. He didn't answer. Before dawn, we heard the call. A long, low note carried on wind that wasn't there. Oren said it meant Tharux had reached the vale. He was near enough to send his sound ahead. I felt the stone burn. Not hot, just wrong. Saya wrapped a cloth around my wrist and told me not to take it off. Said it would muffle the pulse, but I could still feel it. Even in sleep, even in silence. The others spoke less as we moved east. We passed through a field of broken altars, toppled by something massive long ago. Each altar bore the same mark, the hand spiral, carved deeper than the rest. Renya said this was where the old ones tried to bind him, but they failed. Elian led us through a narrow pass where voices echoed with no speaker. Sometimes we'd hear our own names called back, warped like they'd been underwater. At sunset, we reached a stone gate nearly swallowed by vines. Elian told me I had to go through alone. I didn't want to, but Saya nodded. She gave me a pendant made of woven bark and dried seeds. "For focus," she said, "not protection. Focus." Inside the gate, the walls curved like a spiral leading inward. Each step felt heavier than the last. I saw carvings of myself, or someone who looked like me, holding the same stone. Then the path opened into a chamber with no roof. Above, the sky churned red and green like a storm without clouds. In the center, Kale stood barefoot, face calm. But it wasn't Kale anymore. He spoke in 2 voices, one that was his, one that was not. "You brought it here, Aaron. You called it awake." My knees buckled. I didn't understand. I still don't. He stepped forward and the ground trembled. From behind him, a shape rose, tall, thin, wrapped in the color of smoke. No face, just the sense of one. I couldn't move. The stone in my hand lifted on its own, pulled forward like it wanted to leave me. Kale reached for it. Then everything went silent, like sound had never existed. And in that stillness, I remembered something I hadn't known I forgot. A dream I had as a child, a place just like this, and my voice whispering a name I'd never spoken. When I woke, I was alone. The sky was normal again. The stone was gone. So was Kale. And carved into the wall beside me was a single word: return. The word on the wall stayed with me long after I left that chamber. Return. It echoed in my head louder than the wind or the footsteps that weren't always mine. I found the others near the mouth of the canyon. They looked surprised to see me, like they weren't sure I would come back. Saya pulled me aside, touched my face gently, and asked what I saw. I couldn't explain it. Not in words that made sense. only that Kale was gone and the stone had chosen something else. Oren said the path was bending now, not just time but memory, that parts of this world were unraveling. Renya still hadn't spoken since the gate. We moved quickly after that. The jungle felt wrong. Trees leaned toward us. Shadows stretched too far. Elian joined again, walking a few steps behind me like a reflection that wouldn't sink. He spoke in fragments, like someone remembering something as they said it. By dusk, we reached a lake with no reflection. Water dark, still, but not quiet. I leaned forward to drink and saw a version of myself staring back, blinking out of sync with me. Oren yanked me back just in time. He said the lake remembers too much, that once something sees you there, it never forgets. We camped under a stone ledge nearby. Elian whispered stories about a girl who came before. She was marked, like me, brought through during a storm. Her ending was never told, only that the land changed after she vanished. I asked him why he knew this. He said he dreamed it before I arrived, that he saw me standing in a place that didn't exist yet. Sleep didn't last long. Around midnight, the air dropped again, cold, dense, pressing down on our lungs. Renya stood suddenly, eyes wide, and walked into the dark. Saya followed instantly. Oren told me to stay. I didn't listen. We moved through thorns and moss, barely seeing, barely thinking, until we saw them, Renya and Saya standing perfectly still, facing a wall of trees that had no roots, just bark, repeating like a loop. Renya lifted her hand and the trees parted. What lay behind wasn't jungle, it was stone, a bridge made of bone-colored rock, no rails, no end in sight. Saya turned to me and whispered that we'd reached the fault line, where worlds thin, where spirits don't need names. I stepped forward and the bridge hummed beneath my feet, not with sound but with something that moved through my bones. It felt like walking into a memory that didn't belong to me. Halfway across, I saw her, a girl in white robes, hair braided with feathers, eyes just like mine. She didn't speak, only turned and kept walking. I followed. When I looked back, the others were gone. Only silence stretched behind me. The girl stopped at a doorway cut into the rock. She gestured for me to enter. I hesitated, but something behind me shifted. The sky rippled. Inside, the walls were smooth, pulsing faintly like breath. In the center was a mirror with no reflection, only flickers of light like stars. She pointed, and I stepped closer. When I touched it, I saw everything. Kale's last thought, Oren's truth, Saya's sacrifice, and something else, a loop, a cycle older than history, a trade made long ago to keep balance. One from this world must stay when one enters. The stone had chosen me, but I had crossed without paying. Now the world was correcting. The girl smiled gently and faded like mist, and I finally understood. This story didn't start with me. It just waited for me to walk back into it, and this time, there might be no way out. The walk back through the canyon felt longer than before. I wasn't sure if time had stretched or if my thoughts were just louder. My legs moved, but my mind stayed behind that mirror. When I returned to camp, the others were waiting. Saya didn't ask anything. She just placed her hand on my shoulder, and that was enough. Oren watched me closely, not with suspicion but with recognition, like he'd been through something similar once. Renya sat alone, whispering to the trees. Her words were broken, but her tone was steady. Elian was gone. No one saw him leave. No one said goodbye. Only a line of dried petals led from his resting spot into the trees. We didn't speak about it. That evening, the sky lost color. It wasn't night, just pale, like the world was forgetting how to hold its shape. Saya said it was nearing, not a moment, not a thing, just nearing. We walked toward the hills through fields of dry leaves that hadn't fallen from any tree. Oren guided us to a ridge he called the Mouth of Echoes. It was said to repeat things no one had said aloud. When I stood near the edge, I heard my voice say a name I didn't know I remembered. Zareth. It felt cold and familiar, like a place I'd once called home. Saya said the name belonged to one who guarded the veil long ago. I asked if he was real. She said that wasn't the right question. Below us, clouds gathered without a sky. Renya began to hum. Oren joined quietly, like the sound was a ritual they both understood. I didn't know the tune, but something inside me did. That night, I didn't sleep. I stood watch near the fire, but it didn't give warmth, only light. The forest beyond was still, not silent, just waiting. I thought I saw Kale again, standing between two trees, not moving, not approaching, just there. When I blinked, he was gone. At dawn, we reached the stone gate again, but it was cracked now. Saya pressed her palm to it. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. Then the gate opened, not by force, but by memory. Inside was a hall with no floor, just mist. We walked carefully, each step creating a brief reflection beneath our feet. Oren said we had entered the place between. The air felt thick, every breath slow, every sound distant. I heard whispers that followed no speaker, names I hadn't spoken in years. One of them was my mother's. I stopped. Saya looked back and shook her head. You cannot turn around once you've heard the voice. Ahead, lights flickered like stars underwater. Shapes moved between them, not creatures, not people. Something older. Renya reached for one and it disappeared. At the far end was a pillar wrapped in roots. Saya approached and placed her pendant on it. The roots retracted and a circle of stone rose from the mist. This is where it ends, Oren said. Or begins. It depends what you choose. In the center of the circle was a small bowl carved from bone and crystal. Inside, a single drop of water floated above the surface. Saya told me to place my hand near it. I hesitated. Something inside me pulled forward while something else pulled back. And then I heard it again. Return. But this time it wasn't a command. It was an invitation. I stepped closer. The drop moved toward me and touched my fingertip. And for a moment, everything stopped. No sound, no fear. Just the deep, still knowing that something had always been waiting. And maybe it wasn't the world that needed fixing. Maybe it was me. Maybe this place had only ever been a reflection of what I refused to see.